Hey everyone, it's Angela Allen. Welcome back to the Handmade Homestead and Garden. Well, it is the middle of September, and I thought today we would take a really short garden tour just to give you a view of what the garden looks like at the very end of summer, the end of the growing season. Things have slowed down quite a bit out in the garden, but it's still putting out a lot of produce. There's a lot of stuff out there that I need to harvest, but we're not going to harvest now. We're just going to walk through, look at the plants. It is time for us to start taking down some of the stuff in the garden. We've already started a little, but before we accomplish that, I wanted to show you how things look, what's going on out there now, and how we're getting ready for next gardening season come early spring. Those are all kombucha squash. But as you can see, the vines are mildewy and sad, and it's ready to come down. So we're going to be doing a video of harvesting squash in a day or two so that you can see how we harvest them and then what we do with them to ensure that they last through the winter for our family and we get good, delicious, unblemished squash to eat until spring. And we have a lot of squash in this garden this year. Probably altogether there's about 40 of them. So again, these are kombucha squash. I planted them a few years ago. I have saved seeds ever since, and I'm just loving them. We always keep a little grow bag full of zinnia right there. I did cut them back recently. They're just starting to bloom again. Just because they look good from the opening and we enjoy that. There are noodle beans growing here up around on the trellis, two on this side, and then there were grow bags on either side of the bottom of the trellis that had cucumbers. Those have been pulled out for the season. They were very prolific, and we've had cucumbers in a few other places. We had a good cucumber year. So let's go in, and we're going to go to the left so we can look down the rows of the garden next. And my garden's made up of a bunch of wide rows. I am a no-dig gardener, and we do use wood chips between our paths. So this is one path going down. That's the trellis we just came in. There's garden beds on this side, and then on this side going down is our orchard row. That's where our fruit trees are planted. We deliberately keep them small to make it easier to grow just some fruit. We don't want to grow enough fruit for an army. We're only a small family at this point, and that's all we need. My next row going up, there's a trellis way down at the end going this way. That's our front gate going out. You can kind of see that. And then my first row, this is a lot of tomatoes and other stuff. And then another trellis row. These go way down, and then finally the last couple of rows that go way down. All right, let's start at the beginning and we'll walk them. The first bin is empty on purpose. The middle bin is very full. That's all of the compost we've been adding this season. And the very end, that is usable compost. That will all be going on the garden. In another few weeks, the middle bin will get turned out into the last bin, and that will be left to sit until next year. And then the first bin is where we will put all of this fall's garden cleanup, vines and used soil and whatever we need to compost will go in the first bin, and that will slowly get advance to the next bin and then finally advance to the last bin. By the time it gets in the last bin, it should be usable compost. So I think that this spring we're definitely going to have to replace those pallets that are in there. They're getting pretty worn, but for now they're working and we're happy with that. Right across from the compost bin, the other thing I have in this garden down here is a sink and just a little thrown together workbench area that works extremely well for potting up plants, putting new seedlings. I can cover them over with netting there, and washing up in that sink is just so much of a helpful thing to clean dirty, muddy things like carrots and beets before they come in the house. I just use a regular hose. I put a bucket under it to catch the water, and I recycle the water back into the garden. And then right here at the end of the compost pile, there's a big bucket and two grow bags, actually 2 grow bags. 2 of them on the end here have volunteer tomatoes. I don't know where those came from. The plants just popped up in the garden and I planted them there, but you can see they definitely look like sun gold tomatoes. Oh, little chicken drama there in the background. I don't know what they're doing, but everybody looks okay. And then right on the end we have some squash. It was a kombucha squash, and some of that got attacked and the vine died, and I brought the squashes in, but there is still a Lakota squash out here growing. And in the back there's actually even a spaghetti squash growing. And I also have a couple of other squashes in here. There's like a little acorn squash, kind of squash right there. I think you can see it. Let's start our garden tour right here with row number 1. It's heard a big bang, and one of my chickens is on top of the chicken coop. I don't know what she's doing, but she is the funniest chicken ever. She'll come up and knock on the door, our glass door upstairs when she wants a treat. She's very funny. She's definitely the leader of the pack. All right, let's get back to the garden tour. Up here on the right, we've got calendula and then a bunch of eggplant plants. We have 2 kinds of eggplant growing. There's some really beautiful fruits in here. There's a baby just starting, but as you can see, there is really beautiful fruit in here that needs to be harvested. I've harvested quite a lot. I've put quite a lot in the freezer so that I can bake them for different things like eggplant parmesan, or I cut them into fry sizes and batter them, bread them, put them in the freezer so I can do them in the air fryer as fries. That works really well too. So the plants have done really well this year. I have had problems in the past with flea beetles, but that was not an issue this year. And I'll tell you what I did differently. The minute I put the plants in the ground, I covered them with netting and used surround kaolin clay on them, put the netting on them, left the netting on until they were big enough to start to form just the buds of blossoms, and then I took the netting off. And in between that, I just sprayed them with the kaolin clay when I needed to keep them pretty well coated, and I haven't had one flea beetle problem. I did find I had potato beetles on here, the big fat ones that sing at you when you start touching the plants. They start kind of doing this warning buzzing sound. That was interesting, but there was quite a bit of those, but they really didn't do any damage. I found that if eggplant are off to a good start, that you don't have any problems with them after that, and that's just what happened. So next up, I think these are called pippin, these peppers. They start off green and then turn black. And as you can see, if you look at my back fence, there's a bunch right there. How dark purple black they get. And they are super prolific. They just put out a lot of peppers. Look at that. It's crazy, huh? This whole patch down here is basil, and I just harvested it. It's kind of coming back, but it's looking a little sad for the wear. It doesn't like the cooler nights we've been having. This is the back end of the trellis. There's squashes everywhere. And standing here right now, what I smell the strongest is right over here. I have some fennel. See those little flowers? This fennel was about 5 feet tall, and I cut it back and dehydrated it, and now it's all going to seed. And standing here, it just has the most heavenly licorice smell ever right here in this area. These zinnia I cut back recently so that they would rebloom, and they're doing just that. I want to show you something really interesting. Now, I grow peppers. I grow about 88 or 90 peppers this year, and I want to show you how tall my peppers get. You know those little 2-3 foot plants that you get sometimes? Not mine. And I'll tell you my secret. See those plants right there? These are peppers. And you can see, if I get close, those are peppers. And not only the peppers, I'm 5 feet tall and they are my height. All right, you see this pepper plant? I'm 5'2", and so is it. And that's true of most of my peppers in here. They're very tall. Let me show you close up. They're full of fruit. And the fence behind these is only 4 feet tall, so I don't know if you can see the fence back there. But the fence is here. And you can see these are at least a foot taller. These are, I think these are Edgevarsky peppers, these particular ones. But this entire row of peppers, and it's full of peppers. You see them all? They're everywhere. Down here I have some little shishitos. They're getting lost in these banana peppers. It is time to pick peppers. I deliberately grew a lot this year so that I would have them for the freezer. Look at, isn't it crazy? And it's like that all through here, all of these. These are all mild peppers. There are what looks like some jalapenos in here, but they are not jalapenos, so no heat. You can see a few right there. I don't know if you can see them. It's kind of dark in the in the jungle, but I have all kinds of different kinds of peppers in here too. So I fertilized this with a Jadam tank. I use a Jadam tank throughout my garden, and I have a tank. It's been in production for a couple of years now, and I just use it regularly to water, to put over my plants. It provides probiotics for the plants. These zinnia are pretty. I just collect the seeds and replant them each year. That's asparagus on the other side over there. This little bed is empty, needs to be cleaned out again. That's where my garlic grew. This is a pear tree. I'm kind of close to see these, and a peach tree. So over here, there is a pear tree, this peach tree, and this peach tree. This is an Alberta peach. It does still have fruit on it that needs to be picked. Yeah, I'd say it all needs to be picked probably today. None of it's really pretty, but most of it is usable. These two trees, this one and this one, are apples. All right, it's very close in here with all the bushes. This is my second planting run of zucchini for the year, and these will produce before fall. I have some more zucchini over in that direction. I'll show you in just a minute. I have some barrels here in the front. This is a lime tree. It's a Kefir lime, a mandarin orange, and over there is another Meyer lemon. Those two will be going in soon. They live in a big window in my weaving studio. These are leeks, and the leeks here on the left in the green bucket, they will stay for a little bit longer. Just some flowers. All right, this side of the row going up. Just some radishes here at the bottom and some kale over there. This was a row of carrots that was pulled out and is already long since in my refrigerator. And I just threw in a few radishes. I didn't want to plant the whole place out, so I didn't. These are cucumbers. We've had a great year with cucumbers. These vines look really sad. This is a second planting, and that's okay because I really don't need any more cucumbers. I just did that I had the trellis space. I thought I could get a few more for salads, and that's just what we've been using them for. These are green onions. I planted those this year from seed. Just some more radishes and kale. And this is just a volunteer tomato plant that came up, and it's producing fruit, and it looks like a Roma tomato maybe. It's a little walkway in the middle here you can't find, and another volunteer tomato plant. This had peas on it, and then cucumbers on it. This is an encroaching tomato plant, which I should cut back, I suppose. But this is all my Swiss chard patch here, and celery. I have a lot of celery going in here. I got smart about celery. I'll tell you, this is Malabar spinach, which I threw some seeds in there. It took a while for it to germinate, but now that it's come up kind of late in the game, I think next year I will just trellis it back there. I know that everyone isn't a huge Swiss chard fan, but this family is. We eat a lot of it. In fact, that's our green of choice. We eat it more than we eat kale or lettuce or spinach or anything else. This is also where I have celery planted. It's mixed in here. It's its own little patch right here. I learned my first year I planted celery, I planted 15 plants, and I had more celery than I knew what to do with. And I've learned to just put 5 or 6 plants in, continually harvest and eat it fresh. I dry some of the leaves, but other than that, it's left to its own devices. And yeah, I don't need to have tons of it in the fridge for winter as long as I dry some leaves. So this is a bean trellis. It has a couple different kinds of beans, one of which you can see by the looks of this one are rattlesnake beans. This time of year, I let some of the beans stay on the vine so that they can go to seed, and I will replant them. If it's an heirloom variety, I do that so that I can replant them next year. And I think you'll find if you look down here, there are lots more rattlesnake, and then a Kentucky Wonder in here too. Those are just my seed beans for next year. And then this is all carrots going down. We'll get to the squash in a minute, but this is all carrots going down. And then lettuce and just greens that I've planted in there, cut and come again greens. They're a recent planting. These are all sun gold tomatoes going down all the way down to the end. This was something else, and I'm trying to remember what was there early spring, and I can't at the moment. Oh, beets, I believe. Those were beets before. All right, and that brings us to our tomato rows, and I have 2 tomato rows. I do these trellises specifically for tomatoes. I have a very sad looking cucumber. Just that time of year. These cucumbers were planted. These were the second planting. I had no disease problems all summer, but now you can tell they've had enough. This was an empty bag, had a tower in it, and grew cantaloupe, Jenny Lynn melons for us. It did great. We got 5 or 6 big for a personal size melon Jenny Lynn's off there. They were delicious. My tomato panels start off about 18 inches off the ground and then come all the way up. So they're about 6 feet tall to hold my tomatoes. And this is where I grow them. So this side, these are all sun gold cherries. These are all large red cherries, and you can see the difference. Large red cherry, you can see, and then a sun gold tomato. You can see that neither one of these are ripe. The large red cherry on your right will be bright red when it's ripe. The sun gold, they get a little bit more orange in there, but not a lot more. All right, we'll just put that down here in the lemon tree for now. All right, so that's these. I do have a video you can actually check back and watch that about pruning tomatoes. I did not prune this year, and my goodness, I am just overwhelmed with the fruit of these tomatoes. And I'll give you a good example right here. If I just hold the camera, can you see all the fruit clusters? I mean, it's just crazy going now. It's just crazy. And I've been picking and processing and putting them in the freezer. I've been making tomato juice and tomato sauce and all kinds of tomato products that I've canned, and they are just full of tomatoes and non-stop. In fact, I have to get out here and pick tomatoes today too. All right, and we're gonna walk down this tomato row. Again, I didn't prune. All I did was, when there were problems like this where something stuck out, and you can see how this has got baby clusters on it, I actually just go back to the next biggest cluster and then cut them off. That one I'm just going to break. And then it's at the point now where I really need to cut off the height. These are all about, some of these are 8 or 9 feet tall, and those need to be cut off so that the tomatoes that are on them can ripen before cold weather. But as you can see, there's so many on here. I really just, you know, there comes a point when enough is enough, you know, and you need to use the fruit you have without constantly instigating more fruit. All right, let's talk about butternut squash. From here where I'm standing, all the way down to the end of this row, there's one squash plant. Now I've already pulled off some of the squash. I left a couple on so I could show you. These are absolutely ripe and ready to come off. Now how can you tell when to pick butternut squash? You will notice that they'll go from green to yellow to this nice tan color. You can see it's definitely a tan color. And these necks will start to get a little bit woody, though they will probably still say green. And when you harvest, you cut way up here, give them as much neck as you can. And then the other one is the nail test. You push your fingernail in a little bit. If you put your fingernail in, you push. And if you leave the fingernail mark, then they're probably not ready. But if you can do that and not really leave a fingernail mark, you know that they're ripe enough to bring in, and then you can cure them. But this one vine had 7 butternut squash on it. So that was pretty crazy. These are Jetstar tomatoes. This is the first year I've grown Jetstar tomatoes, which I can tell you I try to always grow heirlooms. Look at the size of that tomato there. But I will tell you, I absolutely will grow Jetstar again. They taste good. They're disease resistant. They're determinate, so the vines don't get massive. And I've had no disease problems with them. They've been wonderful. So this trellis is basically my front of my garden trellis, but we never come in and out of this door. And I've gotten to the habit of growing tromboncino squash on here, and I think you can see why they are my favorite squash. Isn't that crazy? Again, I'm 5 feet tall, and that thing is almost my height. So that is a lot. And there's about 9 or so on here. If I go around here, you can see there's more coming and more growing. And these, very much like a butternut squash. Let's go back around to this side. Very much like a butternut squash. When these are young, they're green. And you can eat them. Their skin is soft, and you can eat them like a zucchini. And then as they get bigger, and these are quite big, they start to darken more to that golden color that a butternut squash does. That's a good example. I don't know if the lighting's are good enough for you to see how gold that one is. And then you cure them like a regular squash, and you eat them just like a butternut squash. The seeds are in here, and the flesh in here of the whole neck, see how big around that is, has no seeds. So this is all squash that you can eat. You just peel it, and then the bottom has seeds in it. Now, every year what I do is I take the biggest and best squash, which this year will definitely be that big one right there in the middle, and I save seeds from that one so that when I replant them, I've already got some really good genetics for really big squash the following year. So this is just a tomato plant on the other side. We're going to go back down this row. I think I need to pick beans again. You know, I joke a lot about green beans, but our family loves them, and we eat a lot of green beans. They're a great vegetable, and they freeze well, and they're easy to freeze. Unlike most people, I do not blanch green beans. I wash them. I cut them into lengths. You know, I just snap them into lengths about the size of my thumb, throw them in freezer bags, vacuum seal them, and that's it. I don't blanch them, and I just cook them that way, and that way my beans are never mushy. They're always perfect. They always take like they just came out of the garden. I've left this bean trellis up for fresh eating, but trust me, my freezers are full, and I can't put beans in my freezers at all again. All right. Let's go back down this aisle and we'll go up the next one. All right, this end of my garden does get a little bit cooler and a little bit shadier. I'm lucky in that in the morning here, my garden is a little bit shaded until about 11, and then it's full blazing sun until 5 at night. So even in the summer when it's really hot, if I get out here early, I can garden at least in partial shade on this half of the garden. You can see where the sun line is up there, and it's about 9:30 in the morning right now. So it's not too hot to garden, and then by the time I'm done for the day, the sun comes out and it's full on bright sun, and my garden reaps the benefits of that too. So actually I have 3 rows here. This row going down, it has cabbages, baby cabbages in it for fall. The very end has kale started, and I've got netting over just because we do have bunnies and they're kind of a problem. This row going down, there's 4 or 5 zucchini started in there. Only, it looks like maybe 3 or 4 of them have come up and are doing well enough to produce, but that is our fall zucchini along with the plant that I showed you at the front of the garden. This back row has already been prepped for gardening next year. It's been cleaned out, it has compost on it, and then we put a layer of grass mulch. So no, it won't be all weedy, and it's going to be left like that until next spring. My goal in the springtime is to come out here to move mulch and to plant seeds. This original garden was lawn. You see my lawn over there? That's the other half of our yard. Our fence is way over there. So this whole yard, this whole garden, when we moved in here, was grass, just like that. We put in this garden shed right here. We did cardboard. We did a mixture of 50-50 of compost and soil to make the rows, and in between the rows we put wood chips, and we did that for this whole garden. And we did a smaller garden to start with, and then slowly expanded the width of the garden going this way over the last handful of years. But all that was here was lawn. We didn't dig up the lawn, we didn't rototill the lawn, we did nothing like that. We literally put down cardboard, and then we divided it up to garden row, walkway, garden row, walkway. All the walkways got tons of chips. Every year we don't replace them, we add to the top of them every year. These are hot peppers. I plant hot peppers way away from my sweet peppers to prevent pollination issues, but these are Craig's Grande jalapenos. I thought they'd be a little bit bigger. I mean, I've had them get bigger, but that is not their fault. This is, I believe it is a Jimmy Nardello pepper that somehow got planted over here accidentally, got mixed in with the jalapenos. But these peppers, these were shaded out. Look at that, how pretty that is. There's lots of peppers on there, and I just grow a couple of jalapeno peppers, frankly, because I like to do cowboy candy. We love cowboy candy, but we're not big on a lot of hot peppers. The only peppers I grow that are kind of hot, like I said, the Craig's Grande. I think that they have cross-pollinated with these Jimmy Nardellos, so we'll see. So this row right here, this empty space you see, had 3 zucchini plants in it, and they were really prolific, but they got so big they were taking over the pathway, so I just removed them and started new ones. And this empty space you see here, this actually had corn in it, and the few little plants that you see that are there that we left are blackberries. I had blackberries planted here at one time. We moved them to the back garden around the edges of the yard, and I'm not really happy with them there. I don't think they're doing as well, so I might be bringing them all back. But this was where I was growing corn. Corn's not a big thing for me. I only grow it to have the stalks to decorate my mailbox and my front door, so I'm perfectly fine with not growing them. This box here we grew watermelon in this year. This brings me to another bean trellis. This one is looking really tired. This is one of my favorite beans. It's called Nor'easter. It isn't an heirloom. It is a hybrid, But I save the seeds and they do come back true for me every year. But this one is old and tired. It does produce these really long beans. They don't really get stringy, even when they're super big. And as you can see at the bottom, once again, I have beans that have been left on for seeds. So that's what that is. These are sweet potato bags. I only grow one kind of sweet potatoes. We do use some of the greens. I dry some of them. Sweet potato greens are completely edible. It's very common in a lot of cultures to eat them. In fact, they eat the vine. Like you can cut off this part of the vine and they will saute and eat that. Asian cultures, Indian cultures, very common. Southern folks eat them. They taste like mildly like sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes I grow are a purple, these aren't ready yet, but are a very dark purple Japanese sweet potato that look almost like they want to glow because they're so purple. They're delicious, they're super sweet, they store well. It's the only kind I grow. If I want regular ones, I'll just buy them at the store. I can buy organic ones inexpensively enough. This was a volunteer tomato that I'm just a sucker for volunteer plants. A volunteer plant pops up, its will to live just makes me want to let it grow. So there we go. That is the end of the garden over here. As you can see, a lot of the plants are looking kind of tired. And this week and next week, we're going to be harvesting a lot of the produce. And this time of year, as we harvest, we actually remove the plants as well and then prep the beds for spring. And it will be ready to go come springtime. All I'll have to do is remove the mulch a little bit in whatever the row is and plant my plants or plant my seeds, and I'm ready to go. So that's my goal. That's what we try to do. Do we always get all of that done? We don't. Sometimes there's more work to be done in the spring, but we try. That's what we strive for. So coming up in one of my next videos, I'm going to do one just on how to cure and care for squash once you remove it from the vines. Won't be a very long video probably, but it will give you some good information. So if you're ready to pick your squash, you know what to do with it to get the best flavor and the most longevity to have it last as long as possible. So if you enjoyed this video, there's another one right here I think you'll also enjoy, and I will see you next time. Take care.